Audiovisual translators are the scriptwriters of the translated versions of a film. I'm sure you know how important the script is for a film to be successful. If I were a filmmaker, I wouldn't underestimate that. I would want to work with translators actively and closely to make sure best quality is achieved on every script. And if I couldn't personally work with each one of them, I would want a person in my inner circle that is in charge of coordinating and supervising all those translated versions of my film. I would have regular meetings with that person, and I would gladly answer any questions about my artistic vision to make sure it is optimally transferred. In this video, I want to introduce you to the role of the Director of Accessibility and Translation and how you could make the most out of this person in the filmmaking process. If you have a small project and you only need 1 or 2 linguists, you could easily collaborate with them in an active way, couldn't you? Maybe you only want your film to be translated into 1 language, so you can directly contact an audiovisual translator, ideally also a proofreader, and you can work together. Or maybe you just want your film to be accessible in your language, perhaps to reach blind and deaf people or people who may watch your film in different situations, and you can work with a media accessibility expert. Or in some cases, the translator and the media accessibility expert can be the same person. In any case, you can have some meetings with the linguists from the pre-production stage. You can let them know in advance what is the timeline of your film. You can establish which materials will be needed to achieve best quality and prepare them. You can make sure that they have as much detail on the project as possible and get acquainted with the film's identity and style. And you can discuss your options in terms of translation and accessibility and get involved in the decision making. Maybe you want to adhere to the standards, or maybe you want to jump out of the norm and explore different possibilities such as creative subtitling, for example. Have you ever heard of that? Now, what if you have a bigger project? What if you want your film to be translated into 50 languages? I understand you cannot be available for all translators. You cannot have a meeting with each one of them. You cannot answer one by one all of their questions. But you could do that with 1 person, right? You could have 1 person in your creative team that is an expert in audiovisual translation and media access. And a good name for this role is the Director of Accessibility and Translation. This role has been proposed and studied by researcher and filmmaker Pablo Romero Fresco in his book Accessible Filmmaking, which I strongly recommend you to read. I'll leave you the link in the description. I'll also leave you a link to a free guide where you will find some key points. How can you work with a Director of Accessibility and Translation in your team? Well, the first thing you have to do is, of course, find the right person for the role. The Director of Accessibility must have knowledge not only of translation and accessibility, but also of film. They must be able to discuss film issues, and they must be acquainted with the stages of film production and distribution. The Director of Accessibility and Translation will be expected to hire and coordinate all the professionals that will be needed to develop all the translated and accessible versions of your film. So this person must be able to cope with a great degree of responsibility, as will be the ultimate responsible for the quality of every translated and accessible versions of your film. I must say that this kind of professionals aren't easy to find nowadays, as there is not much specific training on accessible filmmaking or on the role of the Director of Accessibility and Translation. But they exist, and I can put you in contact with some great professionals if you wish. Plenty of research is being done, plenty of work is being done as well, and I'm trying to bring the information here so that more and more filmmakers and linguists know about this workflow that is proving to have a huge artistic potential. So what specific tasks could the Director of Accessibility and Translation perform? I'm paraphrasing here some lines of the book Accessible Filmmaking. In the pre-production stage, the DAT could do the following. Task number 1. Having an initial meeting with the director or the producers to talk about the project, its needs regarding translation and access, and its creative possibilities. Task number 2. Producing a quote. Task number 3, recruiting and coordinating linguists, including translators, proofreaders, media accessibility experts, on-set interpreters, in the case of multilingual productions, and consultants, maybe blind and deaf consultants or field consultants. Task number 4, introducing the accessible filmmaking model to the linguists, if it's the first time for them. And task number 5, creating an initial translation and accessibility proposal with tailored ideas for that specific film. In the production stage, the director of accessibility and translation could be present when needed, for example, to coordinate interpreters and consultants, or to advise on how to apply media access on set. And in post-production, the director of accessibility and translation could have the following tasks. Task number 1, producing an accessibility and translation guide that is to be used by all linguists. Task number 2, organizing and leading at least 2 meetings per service. For example, maybe 2 meetings for translation, 2 meetings for audio description, and 2 meetings for accessible subtitling or creative subtitling, depending on each project needs. On those meetings, you could be involved in decision making, answer some questions to the linguists, ask some questions as well, and provide feedback. Task number 3, coordinating the production of all the translated and accessible versions of the film, which involves liaising between the film crew and the linguists. And task number 4, managing the quality control process. You could also condense all these tasks and contact the director of accessibility and translation in post-production. But if you want to ensure best quality, best practices, and best mental health of all the professionals involved, this would be the ideal workflow from pre-production. These are not just theoretical ideas. This role and this workflow have already been explored in some productions. Actually, I've done this in the past myself, not on a big scale, but on a small scale. An artist friend of mine, Juan Bass, produced a musical a couple of years ago and asked me to translate all the songs and to provide audio description and subtitles. So we worked together, we had some meetings where he explained everything to me about the play, so I could transfer all those nuances through my words. It actually was a challenge because it was a conceptual play, it was silent, and the song lyrics and the audio description carried all the weight of the script. Oh yeah, by the way, the audio description was meant to be heard by everyone because we wanted to explore the creative potential of accessibility. You can see it was crucial in this case that the director supervised my work. My first proposals in those cases weren't the final ones. But that's the way things work in the filmmaking process, right? The first proposal of a script is never the last one. Feedback and collaboration are essential. The director and I worked together until every word transferred the right message, in harmony with the production style and identity. Just to mention a few of the projects that involve the presence of a director of accessibility and translation, we have Chaplin, The Progression of Love, and Acquario, with Josh Branson as the director of accessibility and translation, and Notes of Blindness with Pablo Romero Fresco as the director of accessibility and translation.
Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. Today is Tuesday, and I'm wondering if this machine will record or not.
I hope I could give you some food for thought and some ideas to be considered in future projects. The same way you work in collaboration with the art director or with the makeup artist, because their work is going to have a huge impact on your final product. You could have a person in your creative team that ensures your script, nothing more, nothing less than your script, is well treated in all languages and in every one of its versions.